Jereshia, it feels like a bit of a long time coming, and I'm just so happy to welcome you to the show.
I'm like so pumped to be here. Like Dallas, anybody, if you've been listening to this, you already know how amazing Dallas is, but it's an honor to be on the other end of the mic.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. And the conversation we're going to have today is an important one because the people listening are values driven coaches. They don't mind building their business slowly if it means building it right. And they want scalability in a values aligned way. And I feel like you are an example of what that can look like. So I'm excited to talk about what it looks like to expand beyond one to one coaching.
Yes, let's do it.
Okay. So I would love to just dial into this to tangible metrics other than I feel like I should expand beyond one to one coaching. What are some tangible metrics that a coach can reach in order to know it's time to expand?
Yeah, like before I dive into metrics, I want to make sure we're clear on the mindset. So I think there's
Great.
three things that need to be true if you want to transition to group is one, your ability to articulate the value of what it is that you deliver. And I imagine if you're listening to this right now, you're either probably already really good or really effective at delivering the value, like helping the client actually experience the transformation of what it is they enrolled with you for. But transitioning into group also requires these two elements or attributes: is your ability to how effective you are at articulating your value publicly, and aligning those two things with where demand already exists. So value delivery, value articulation, delivery is private, articulation is public,
Yep.
and aligning that with where demand already exists. And where we've noticed the most success for clients who transition from one-on-one to group is that they're deciding. It's like, I think part of it is like the metric of what are you deciding to actually transition in, like what offer are you trying to transition or what problem are you trying to solve that you're trying to transition. And when you can transition, like if you've already been working with private one-on-one clients, you'll start to recognize there's a pattern that you're noticing and how you're teaching or where clients are getting challenges, and those patterns now become your process for the group delivery.
Yeah.
So you can really transition. Like I think when you start to notice the metric of how frequent of a cadence are clients getting the result that you predicted based off of what your program promises, like that's a really important metric.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the second piece from a metric perspective is because when you start going into group, it's about how consistent are you at being able to generate qualified leads applying for your program. So I think client results and qualified applicants for
Yeah.
your actual program are two key metrics to help you influence whether or not there's demand and if it's time for you to shift.
Yeah, I can almost hear our listeners asking, well, how can I communicate the value of a group if I haven't done it yet? So can
Mm-hmm.
you dig into that a little bit for folks?
Yeah. So all of what we do is teaching clients how to transition into group delivery. And I think you're always overcoming objections. You're overcoming objections to get the sale, and then you're overcoming objections to get the client to do the work, to get the result that you promised. But when you transition from one-on-one into group, you have to recognize that all the things that you used to focus on the value of, like it's private one-on-one, it's
Yeah.
exclusive, it's customized, it's intimate, and all these things. Now you have to shift into why is group better than private one-on-one. And why it does become better is that you go from the value being placed on the customization that they can get from you, the provider, to the value, the prospect paying for the effectiveness of your ability to document your processes. So the value shifts from, oh, she can customize and give me whatever I need, to the value being in the documentation of her process is so solid, I know that I can get the result even if I don't have her. So the value shifts from
Yeah.
I'm buying you as the person to I'm investing in this documented, proven process that you've put together in the form of your curriculum. So I think that's one like
Mm.
immediate fundamental like value shift. But I think the second piece is that your marketing needs to become more sophisticated. And what I mean by that is maybe before when you were selling one-on-one, you could really focus on the elements of the solution being the prize of like, this is why my one-on-one is so good. I can customize better than anybody else. You'll have full access to me, no boundaries. Call me whenever you want. Box me whenever you need. Slack me on the weekends, like, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
I think when you start transitioning into group and when you start to remove more and more of the dependency to get the result away from you and into the curriculum and into the coaching, your marketing needs to become more sophisticated, and being able to articulate your value. And what I mean by that is like aligning your messaging with how buyers are making psychological decisions. Like, what is the psychology around how your prospect is making buying decisions? So your content has to shift from like telling people what to do, the how-to tactical content, to teaching people how to think.
Yeah.
And the messaging of your content focusing more on that.
Yeah, that's so valuable. And what I heard you say, there's a few points I want to make sure our listeners grab. The first one is we can't be lazy in the messaging, where when what we're offering is private, there's so much room to just be lazy because it's an intimate experience and you've already reached out to me because you like me, so you're buying me. And now I'm ready to move to groups when I can document proof of the process I've taken private clients through. And now I have to rely on the proof of my process as the evidence that the group is better.
Yes.
So it's not the same as you're going to get me privately to now we're in a group and you're going to be in a supportive community. I have to go really rely on the process and then help people mentally prepare themselves. Or when I talk to my Hive members, we talk about helping your audience believe that the thing they want is possible and that they are capable of having it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I hear you saying when it comes to the sophistication of the messaging.
Yeah, because you start messaging more beyond like all the features of what it is that you
Mm-hmm.
include. And you start speaking to like those private beliefs that are influencing how they're making buying decisions. What are all those areas of resistance? What are all those objections? What are all those truths that never really should have been truths to begin with? Like improper diagnosis of their problem.
Yeah.
And more of the again, your content is teaching them how to think about how to shift their perspective or elevate their perspective around what it is they currently believe, that they, why they can't do it, why they're not capable, why it won't work for them, and also why your solution is the best solution for them in their particular season of business or particular season of life. And I think when you go to group, I think niching down and becoming even more specialized in what you were doing in one-on-one is, I mean, I don't want to say it's required. I think it's difficult to sell at a higher ticket in group when you have a very vague program promise or a vague niche. But specializing is, I think, makes that process a lot simpler. And it also allows you to provide more value because you can design the process of the delivery to actually cater to a specific person at a specific moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the last part of the transitioning is the curation and the qualification of the members that you're putting in your group. Like the value is no longer Dallas has all the answers.
Yeah.
But the value shifts to I can trust this process. And also like there's this inherent value of who my peers are going to be. And they've been vetted and they've been qualified. They're not just letting anybody who can pay in the door. And I think all those elements, like when you have to change to being a leader of one-to-one privately to now, designing and curating the culture of the community of the program container that you're building as well, and maintaining those elements in addition to documenting your curriculum and driving demand through the sophistication of your marketing content.
Yeah. I want to talk more about documenting curriculum. So for our listeners who went through any sort of coach certification program, what we are fed, and I tend to disagree with this, so here come the DMs. The client has all of the answers, and our job is to ask really great questions to bring their higher self forward. And there can be some truth to that, but people hire me because of my experience and expertise, and I'm not going to withhold that, right? Yes. So, but that's beside the point. But for coaches who feel like they're so in the moment with their clients and every client's experience is unique, how can they get started documenting a process? Because I believe they've got one. They don't. So how can you help them get started thinking about this piece differently?
I think first thing you have to decide is what business model are you trying to build? And at
Mm-hmm.
what price point do you want to be enrolling clients? Because I think if you want to say maybe getting paid hourly, maybe getting paid on this like much looser type of framework or form, um, going with the flow with your clients might work. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know, but I think if you want to start selling package pricing, if you want to start charging, $3,000 or more, most people, even if we have life coaches and people who have coaching certifications that we've worked with, there's still people are paying for an expertise. And I think
Yeah.
part of it, sometimes we can get kind of stuck in this silo of like, this is what I want to sell, as if our business is functioning and operating in a silo outside of like the economy at large. And I think audience and customer base is becoming more sophisticated. So the claims that we are making, that we are selling our audience or selling to people, have to also align with the market sophistication in which we're selling into.
Mm-hmm.
So I think part of this is like, how do I go about this approach? It's like, you have to make some decisions now as a business owner. What problem do I want to decide that I want to focus my messaging and my marketing to be around? And I think maybe the issue sometimes like, well, I know I can help a lot of people. I know you know that, and we know that, but that's really confusing when you start to try to do that from a marketing and a messaging perspective publicly. So either
Mm-hmm.
decide, like, make some decisions around, this is the problem that I'm going to solve. This is the Olympian or the specific person who has these attributes of urgency and qualification at this moment in time that I want to solve that problem for. And I think when you can make those decisions, you'll start to immediately notice patterns. So what I
Yeah.
recommend is I would look at who are the 3 or the 4 best clients that if you were like, if I could repeat them over and over again, my business would be great. I love helping them, and they all achieved a similar result.
Yeah.
And then you'll start to recognize patterns and how you'll see the patterns of like, they asked these questions at this point. We had to go through I had to teach them this in kind of this order, and about 80% of it will be consistent. And then when you transition into group, I'm a big believer in not pre-recording and building it before you sell it.
Same. Mhm.
Okay. Yeah. I'm like that. We be on the
Why, like,
same
why
thing.
would you do that to yourself?
I know.
Your students?
And so give yourself permission to teach your curriculum live, like a professor would at a university.
Mhm.
So then you kind of have this loose outline, and then, every week or every other week or once a month, whatever your container is, you'll teach an element live as a workshop, but now you reserve the coaching around the comprehension, or like your students' comprehension around what it is that you taught, which they still do know the answers. But I think when you
Yep.
clarify a promise that your program container is delivering on, you're really selling, like, your process is your perspective and your beliefs around getting that result. And then your coaching gets more reserved. I think too, when you go to group, you have to recognize you're no longer just a coach. You've
Yeah.
now also became a teacher. And I think maybe that's where maybe some of those coaches maybe get stuck. It's like, well, I'm only a coach. They have the answers, but you're also a teacher now. So there's a level of expertise and provision that you provide, but now you're coaching, and the support around that coaching comes around the execution, the implementation, the comprehension around what it is that you taught. So that might be another way to think about it.
Yeah. What you just sparked in me, and I talk about this a lot when I'm talking about selling, but it applies here perhaps even more. And it's the difference between centering yourself and centering the client. So if I'm centering self, of course, I want it to be organic and we're all just about connecting and I'm so present, I'm almost channeling channeling my feedback and it's just so juicy, right?
Yes.
That's me choosing based on my own experience rather than the client's needs. And what you just outlined was what it actually looks like when you center the client and take the time, even if that means going back and listening to the recordings of your coaching sessions, taking the
Yes.
time to deconstruct what it is that actually happened, because the process is in there and there is overlap. There are patterns for sure.
100%. And this, I think, goes back to the decision of like, if you desire to grow beyond one-to-one, you have to ask yourself, like, what's required of me to elevate to this new season?
Mhm.
And what's required, like, we're on this learning journey. There's going to be a new skill set you're going to have to sharpen, refine, and develop. And I know I think maybe something that's just helpful to maybe hear is you can argue for your limitations for as long as you want to keep them.
Yeah.
And the limitation of, oh, my client, I can't remove customization. Well, it depends. It depends. How I do this depends. It's like you have to make it no longer depend, where it's clear. And it's like, then also elevate your belief that there's enough people in the audience that you can message and market to who will want to buy this more specific thing than maybe what you were doing before.
Yeah. I really, really hear that. I do. So, all right. I think we're getting people to believe us.
If not, maybe just a little bit curious, like, okay, I don't know.
Yeah, right.
But I'm like, I'll keep listening.
So, do you have a recommendation around a business model, like for a coach who they've hit six figures, even 150K with a private model, and now they want to reach more and have a program or a course? Is there a recommended business model that you often lean into for the coach who wants to go into the multiple sixes?
Oh, yeah. Well, one, it's going into one to many. You have to decide what type of one to many you want to do. And again, this goes beyond just what you want to deliver, but also like what marketing and sales approach do you want to take? So I think what I've seen in our industry from the 7, 8, 9-figure coaches I've been around, and even just from the clients that I've served, is when you're at that 100, 200 grand, like you have to then decide, do I want to go down the digital course route where I am playing a volume game, where I do need a lot, a large enough audience and a large enough number of leads to make these numbers make sense. Where I'm probably going to be selling something less than $3,000 because again, the approach from your messaging, your marketing, and your sales process will be fundamentally different because again, the buying decision criteria is different for that at that price point, like just inherently. Or do I want to go down the one to many route where I may be doing a more high touch, high ticket, above $3,000 group coaching program where maybe you don't need as many leads. It's a smaller quantity, but those smaller quantity of people are paying more money. Because that marketing and that messaging and that sales approach is different. So I think this is where the decision of, oh, what can I deliver? Your mindset has to evolve to what is the marketing, the messaging, the sales process that I really want to double down on? Because I think the approach is very different. When you're playing a volume game, it's different than a value game from a quantity versus quality perspective. So I think that's like from business model, you can go one to many in a lot of ways, but I think deciding, do I want to sell something less than $3,000? Do I want to build the marketing and the sales funnels that support that type of offer and the volume that's needed? Or do I want to sell something $3,000 or more, like $3,000 plus, where it's more of the curation of the community is really, really important. And the sophistication of your marketing and your sales process needs to evolve. And I think that is the decision at that point that will serve you very, very well. I think it's difficult for people to try to do both, to maybe have two offers in each of those categories. It's not impossible, but it's grueling from personal experience and from what I've witnessed.
Yeah, agreed. You're just doubling the work because of what you said about the different type of marketing. The marketing is so different that you're like doing everything twice, right? Yeah. Okay. So what I heard you say was when I'm ready to move from one to one to one to many, I need to decide like which road am I going to drive down, the course creator route or the group coaching route. You're reminding me of an Instagram post I saw you do not long ago, and I laughed out loud. And I think you were actually sharing someone else's post. So I want to give credit where credit is due. But it was something, Jereshia, about all of these high ticket group coaching programs that are just a course, right? Just a course with an extra zero.
One of my friends, James Kemp, posted this, and I saw it and I was like, bro, you are clowning today. But what he said is 93% of high ticket programs are just courses with calls.
Yes.
He made up that percentage, but I'm just like, hilarious and true.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I don't want anyone to misunderstand is that, and tell me if you agree, going down the high volume course route is not an easier path necessarily. The group coaching route or the course route, like they both have their own set of challenges.
100%. Right? Like to me, it's actually easier selling a $15,000 program than it is selling a 1,500.
Completely.
Personally, like you have objections from clients in both arenas. You have hesitancy, resistance from clients in both arenas. You have to I personally think it's harder going down the course, lower ticket, higher volume route. Personally, because I feel like you're constantly on the hunt for enough leads to make it make sense. You're probably running paid advertising unless you already have some sort of existing organic large volume presence, which I think is more rare than anything. Like I think of our, girlfriend, Vanessa Lau. I think she's a rare breed. Like her
Right.
YouTube following is like, I don't know, 500,000 people or something like, and I think you need to be a content creator if you want to do the organic play from that position, I think. But, I don't know. I think it's not, one is nowhere near easier than the other. But personally, I think it's harder selling that route because it's, there's a lot of dependency on paid advertising a lot of the time. And also the mindset and the psychology of the buyer personally is one that I don't prefer to have to not support, but like manage expectations around versus somebody who's charging or paying higher ticket.
Tell me more about that. What do you mean?
Like, and most of the time in digital course industry, like failed payment rates are significantly higher. Like I think the norm is maybe 20 to 30%. From like some of the books I've read or the research conversations I've had with like Gravy, who does failed payment recovery or stuff like that. Like people's failed payment rates are higher. So you're dealing with more refund requests or just failed payments in general for payment plans for a $97 or $197 a month for a 12-month type of situation. And I don't know, I think people's expectations are just very different of like, I should get lifetime value. And I think too, you have to just look at the industry, all the other course creators, what is the norm that they are setting? Because that is now influencing the expectations that buyers have.
Yes.
But you may not have the operational team to deliver those expectations that a lot of the industry is now, it's lifetime access is kind of like a norm. Being bonused group coaching calls or private one-on-one calls can seem almost like a norm when they're doing that because they have different operational capacity to deliver it than maybe you do at 150 grand versus maybe a multi 7-figure course creator who can provide with way different capital, way different team structure. I think when I'm going down the high end route, I mean, I don't even know. We probably had like less than 2% of failed payments and we have like a 90% payment recovery rate. Like people are they reach out to us before we can even reach out to them half the time if a payment fails. Like, oh, my bad, girl. Like my credit card, I was, hiking through the Himalayas or something. And I lost my credit card on the cliff. Like it's more, there's a different level of expectation. And I think just respect that kind of comes. Like, I think too, as well at that level, most of those clients have been around the block before they come work with us. They're not expecting for me to be their savior and to have all the answers. They recognize my position as a shepherd as a part of their journey. So I think half of your job when you go to one-to-many is just managing the expectations that your clients have based off the things they say and don't say with your delivery. So I think that just different price points attract different perceptions and different expectations. So I think those are some of the things to kind of think about.
Yeah. And also just understanding the industry that you are in. What I find is a 997 program. What I see is a lot of those programs promising ungettable results.
Yes.
And so that's also the norm. So people come in paying $1,000 for a lifetime access to a 7-module program and actually think that is the answer when it might solve a really specific problem, but it's not really the answer.
Or it gives you a vague overview of a lot of problems, but not depth on how to actually resolve them. And I think too, a lot of the time with the courses, I think when you start to grow beyond 150K, 200 grand, you start to realize that it's not necessarily about what's the new thing that you need to learn to do, but it's around how do I have a depth of mastery around the few things that have worked well and where can I double down to start to experience greater results.
Yeah.
And, buying a course that if you feel, if you're a course junkie, if you're somebody here is a recovering course junkie.
No one listening knows what you're talking about right now at all.
I'm like, you keep buying stuff and then you feel bad for not finishing them.
Yeah.
And then your guilt or self-shame of not finishing them prevents you from making the investment in the place that your business actually needs. I just want to it's not necessary. If there's a reason why you haven't finished it, that might be an exact reason why you need to enroll in a higher end program, because maybe there's a lack of either clarity in how to actually implement what it is that you need, because they're introducing problems, but not giving you the process to fix and provide the solution. Or like you said, it might be that course might be addressing one particular problem, but maybe there's context around it that you might need. Yes. So I think that's the other part of consuming information. It kind of goes back to the employee mindset versus the entrepreneur mindset. Because being a really good employee, it's well, you can go to school and get a good degree and that's enough for you to get a promotion, or go take this certification, consume more information, and now you're more qualified for the next position. Business does not care how much you know if you don't know how to execute it regularly, consistently, and accurately. Doing the work isn't enough all the time. You have to do the work accurately and have these consistent refinement loops over and over and over again. If maybe you're repeating the exact same thing to get a little bit more data next time, to know how to, adjust one thing. Sometimes it's minor tweaks, but I think it's not so much consumption. I think at this point, it's consumption of the right thing, but being able that consumption supportive of you being able to execute it well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So I want to scale. Do you have an opinion, Jereshia, about how many offerings are too many offerings?
Oh, yeah, of course I do. I think you can get to 1 million with 1, max 2.
Yeah.
And that, again, this is just based off of client data from peers. But I think depending on how simple your business model is, when you get to a point where you've decided to grow to 1 million or beyond, I think if you're selling high ticket, $3K plus, I think one offer that's $3 to 10 grand. And then if you choose to have a secondary offer, that is a direct result of I think every great program solves one problem and creates a new one. And I call it a succession offer versus I think maybe traditionally they're talked about as ascension. But if the only time I would recommend having a second offer is if the second offer directly solves the problem that the first offer created, so that you're not focusing on getting new leads, but rather how do I retain the existing clients that I have and increase lifetime value of the clients that I had for my core program. That's the only time I'd recommend, because then it allows you to reduce the level of confusion from your public marketing, because you're not trying to, necessarily make content that's speaking to 2 fundamentally different philosophies and approaches. But 2 max.
Yeah. It's interesting because I agree with you, and there could be an exception. I'm thinking out loud here, so we'll see where this goes. But before I worked with coaches, I had a business. I was a business mentor for actors. So this was a teeny tiny niche with a very specific set of shared goals and obstacles. So actors, they want to book more work. They believe they need a talent agent in order to do that. Somewhere along the journey, they realize that their talent agent is not going to do all the work, and it's time for them to step up and do an agent themselves. And in order to do that, they've got to take care of their mindset. So that they might have different ways to describe that, but it's really a shared set of beliefs and obstacles. So that business, I had 5 courses. And we had someone would start at the Actors Business Blueprint, and then they would buy the 4 other programs. So we had repeat customers. We took that business to just under 7 figures, but it was unique in that the niche was so super small and the experience was just really, really shared. But I think where coaches can go is, okay, I want to make more money, so I have to repeat what I just did and sell to the same people. So let me create another offer. And that's where we can can
Yeah,
create
but I
chaos.
imagine that those
Mhm.
5 courses could have been one high ticket program.
Yes. Yeah, completely.
And like you said, you had a very niche situation, and also the offers that you designed as were very complementary to the core problem. And I think too, a lot of the time in cases of coaches, they will create new offers that are not, there's not existing demand. Like your people, there was a clear demand for the next thing.
Mhm.
And I think, again, those things could have been, and I think how you wouldn't even know if they're complementary, those things could have been one. I'm just guessing, could have been potentially one
Yeah.
bigger program.
Yeah. Keen
Um,
observation. Well, they were built in the way that you just described. Okay, you finish this course and we solved that problem and it created a new one. That's how I
mhm.
designed the program. So that's exactly speaks to the point you made earlier.
Yeah. So I think
Hmm.
that's like, again, our world is all high ticket. I would not have like 5 high ticket
No.
programs per se. But in that world, like I think that I love that
Yeah.
maybe contradiction or just a different approach to the perspective. But I think you being very intentional about whatever offers you have, if there's not clear demonstrated demand for the next solution, I think it can be very difficult and cumbersome, especially if you don't have, again, the operational capacity to attract enough leads for both, to market for both, to sales for both, client delivery for both, and all of that.
Yeah. If I had to do it again, I mean, there's a reason I'm not doing that business anymore.
So I mean, maybe talk about that. Like what you guys said,
Mhm.
you said around 7 figures, like what was your aha to make a change?
Yeah. Well, it was on the personal side of things. I became a mom and threw my television away.
Oh,
So I like, how am I supposed to teach you how to be in an industry that I don't care
you don't even
about?
consume anymore.
Right? So there was that piece, but also we were in a perpetual launch. I
Mm,
had the belief, found it or not, I think it's like a 50-50 true and 50-50 my own limitation, that this market, they're not going to pay more than $900 for a program. My program
mm,
was 900 and it was the most expensive thing in town. So that belief drove me to have these multiple offerings. But yeah, we were just with 5 programs, we were in a
never enough.
perpetual launch.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Probably every month.
Hmm. It was every quarter, and then we'd flash sale something in December.
Ooh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And it was fun until it wasn't anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. We have a
Yeah.
client that does dog anxiety coaching
Hmm.
for paw parents whose dogs have been clinically diagnosed for anxiety. And super niche, very similar to what I'm hearing you say. And
Yeah.
also very similar. She's like, I can't charge more than $600 for this. It used to be a
Mhm.
digital course until she started working with us. And she's like, it's the premium in our industry. If I charge more, people are going to think that I'm a dog trainer, which I'm not. It's completely different approach than like resolving their dog anxiety than just like training your dog how like not to bark when the mailman comes home.
Mhm.
And I think with offer positioning, she now sells that same program for like about $6,000, I think is where she's at. And it's been
10x.
about 6 months and she's make those shifts. But I think like you said, kind of when you start to, that belief might be valid to some degree, or it's like how do I radically differentiate myself so people can't even compare me to competitors? And yeah, I am the most expensive, but like I'm going to be the Lambo of my industry
Mhm.
or be the
Mhm.
Ferrari or the whatever of the industry. And like you can assume that position too.
Yeah.
So like, there's so many ways to go about it. I think it's just deciding what's the way that's most congruent with you and how you actually want to show up and lead.
So I have 2 questions I want to end with. The first one is for anyone listening today who has committed, this is the year that they expand beyond one-to-one. What's a tangible first step or thought that they can make?
Oh, I would immediately go try to sell what this group offer is going to be like right now. So I would open up your phone. If you're listening to this, you could, well, listen to what I'm going to say and then pause the episode and come back maybe, or finish listening to this episode and then go do this. But I would go immediately to your Instagram stories or go to immediately wherever you normally have conversations with clients.
Mhm.
Or you could go to your existing client base and like maybe first write down like what is the problem that has presented itself that goes beyond the scope of what we cover in one-on-one. That's the new problem that this one-on-one coaching created, and clarify what that problem actually is, like whatever it might be. And then I would either one, go pitch that offer back to your existing clients to say, hey, we have another container that we're going to be supporting a handful of clients in, addressing this new problem. Would you like to join us? And just come up with some small container, maybe 3 months, you can just test it out in small kind of thing and try to go sell it and like, see what are the objections that you get, see, what are the questions that people ask, and allow that feedback that you're getting to influence like the frameworks and the approach that you take with being able to sell it. But like that's the first thing I would go do. Like if you're like itching, is like, go test the waters, I would go look at the data for my existing clients.
Yeah.
Where's the pattern and the problem that I'm seeing? And I would first go probably pitch it to go make the invitation. I shouldn't say pitch, because I think energetically you might approach that differently, but go make that invitation to your existing clients to join you in a new container, resolving that new problem, and just see how that goes.
Yeah.
If it goes well, then go make the invitation publicly to your audience to either fill out the container, or maybe get a few more folks.
It's so great, because what you just did was encourage everyone to, I'm using air quotes for our listeners, but to research in a very activated, profitable way, because you could spend a year or 10 researching and never making an invitation. So that's really great advice.
Go make the invitation while
and figure it out.
Yeah. While you can do some research, but like when you notice, okay, there's 3 people out of the 5 past clients that all have this problem. First, ask yourself, one, do I want to help them solve that problem? And if yes, then go make the invitation. And like, there's so much you cannot prepare for until you actually work with clients, because you know how to be a good coach. You have to now learn how to be a great teacher too.
Yeah. And hold that space. It's different.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So this is a bit of a curveball, and it may be your answer may be completely unrelated to anything we've already talked about. But I'm just curious, what's one rule you wished every online business owner lived by?
You need to be able to measure your client results. That's something I care deeply about. Like, care enough about your clients to want to measure the results that they get. I don't know. I feel like I don't feel like everybody in our industry doesn't do this, but I feel like there's a large part of our industry that's so focused on just how do I get new people in the door, and how do I satisfy their expectations enough. But there's not enough, I think, not even just how many people finish my program, but how many people are getting the result that your program promised. Yeah. So I think that would calibrate a lot of these over promising and under delivering, that 6 figures in 6 weeks with working 6 minutes a day. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
Or I think that would normalize and just recalibrate expectations around what's actually required. Like, people selling like, oh, I surf every day, but like on the back end in their business, they're working 12 hours a day. Like, it's just being more truthful about the reality of what's required to experience whatever transformation it is. And I just think that would bring more honesty, more integrity, more morality, just more ethical approach to selling, and a more, just ethical alignment of expectations. If coaches cared about measuring the results their clients got and using that data to influence what their program promise is, influence their messaging, influence their marketing, influence their client delivery, like, not how many people complete your program, how many people get the result that you promised. Because some people won't need to finish the whole program to get the results, and that's okay. So that would be the one thing.
I love it.
Self-regulation.
Yes, self-regulation. And intentionality, right? Like that. I love because what you offered was a tangible path or a tangible solution to this problem that a lot of people are talking about, which is, this might be too strong of language, but deceptive marketing.
It's absolutely deceptive. It can be manipulative. I think some of it is immoral, like, conniving. Like, I'm not saying necessarily all bad ways, but I think it can make it difficult for the consumer.
Thank you.
And to be able to, like, I just believe that our job in sales is not to get the yes. It's to help the client make the best next step decision for themselves. And sometimes that decision is with us and sometimes it's not. And it's not personal, because kind of what you said earlier, of like removing yourself from the center and putting the client in the center. I think when you can serve like that, I mean, I think that's a very like spiritual way to serve. It's a very servant
Yeah.
leadership approach. And I think abundance comes out of that naturally.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's allowed me to have a lot more simplicity in my business, trusting that abundance will come from that way. But I also sleep so much better at night.
Yeah.
I love the clients. Like, I haven't built a business that I hate. I haven't built a business that has caused me to go into depression, or which happens very often in our industry. We build these businesses that almost break us. And it's broken me in other ways that needed to be healed, but not in the way of like, it allows me to grow in a way that's still congruent with my values and congruent with my spirituality. Which I think more people could benefit from, both financially in their business, but also just with like for themselves, like internally.
Yeah. I'm so glad I asked.
That was a great question.
So thank you for coming on the show. This was really helpful, and I hope it sparks something in all of our listeners, especially the ones who have been waiting for the perfect sign to tell them that they're ready to expand beyond one-to-one. Let this episode, yes, I'm talking to you, let this episode be the sign that you've been waiting for. Jereshia Hawk, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you back next week.